Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I believe that we are now live. Hello there. Welcome to another book reading with me, Richard Vobes, on the Bald Explorer. Very kind of you to join me on this Monday. And a new book. So I'm quite thrilled about that. We finished The Wisdom of the Fields last week on the Tuesday, I think. And then there were a few things. So we've had to I just thought it was sensible to try and get these out in a way that doesn't interrupt the flow as much as possible. So hello to TurboStream, hello to John F, and hello to Linda Kane. Managed to get here this afternoon. Look forward to the new book. This book is called The Lure of Sussex, and it's by a gentleman who I've not heard of before called Thurston Hopkins. And it was published in 1928. This is a first edition, apparently. I don't know whether that makes it of any value or whatever. So there we go. And it's, as it says on here, wherever the title page is, I'm just looking for the title page again, I've lost it. A record of indolent travel, which does sound rather grand, doesn't it? There is an introduction by Cecil Palmer, but I don't know that we need to do the introduction. I think we might just crack on with the book. Hello to Andy Stacey. I was lured by the promise of Sussex, says TurboStream. Haven't got that one, says Linda Kane. There you go. This isn't by Philip Mercer, I should hasten to add, whose books are very rare, so I believe. Excuse me having a slurp of coffee as we go. So I feel like we haven't done this for ages, but it's only been a few days, really. Yeah. There's the preface, which I won't bother to read. But what's interesting in the preface is that he does this preface and it sort of explains the reason for doing this and what have you. And then it's interesting, these old books, they used to do this. He puts his address. So it's signed off as RTH, R. Thurston Hopkins, 6 Vale Road, Portslade, Sussex. Can you imagine an author doing that these days, of actually putting their address, or even their email address? So I don't think people do that, do they? Anyway, there's a little poem at the front of this, which I'm not going to read. I did try reading it, but I'm rubbish with poems. And I can't get the I just can't get the rhythm quite right, and I always balls it up because they write them in a way that's not the same as prose. You know what I mean? Sort of, trying to limit the amount of words and get it into the rhythm and everything else. So anyway, shall we crack on? If we're all here, I note that the lovely Julia isn't here, slightly perturbed because she was over here earlier today, and she's dashed off to do pick up her son and what have you, and she's doing the Vogue show later on. Anyway, by the way, hello to those who are listening to the podcast as well. I'll try and make sure that this goes out a little bit more immediate after the reading. I do try. So the first chapter here is called Burwash to Heathfield. Wait a minute, TurboStream says, although the lure of Pembrokeshire may hamper this book this week. Are you going to Pembrokeshire? It's very nice down there, but Sussex is also good. Okay, here we go. Put away all that pile of books, said the doctor. You're run down, just a little bit jerky in the nerves. No more books and scribbling paper for you. The book, which is to make Shakespeare's fame tremble in the balance, must be postponed. It can be written later on, and if you don't get it finished, some other literary ghoul will. Put a few things into a satchel and walk, young man. Mind you, no dilly-dallying walking on paving stones and tarred roads. Get into the heart of the country. Walk through fields and footpaths. Don't loiter or shirk rough weather. Plough through the mud and the rain. Fight your way over bog, marsh, hill and dale. Nothing poured out of a bottle will put you right. You need air and exercise." "Am I to go by myself?" I asked, as I listened to the rain's immeasurable beat on his windows. "Well," said the doctor, looming gloomily out on the rain-drenched garden, "a companion would cheer you up. That is, if you can find anyone who is such a fool as to face a month's wind, rain and mud for no urgent reason. If you owe anybody a particular grudge." At this point, my mind turned to dear old Palmer. With a smothered chuckle, I pictured his 16-stone carcass, chassis even, not carcass, it's an impolite way of putting it, his 16-stone chassis ploughing deep in the November mud, while the free wind of high Sussex whimpered across the downs. Somewhere at the back of my head, I immediately selected him to be my victim. "I suppose all alcoholic drink must be avoided," I began. "No, certainly not. A glass of plain ale is a tonic. Let's say 2 glasses of ale a day, and 2 biscuits with each glass. The biscuits will remind you to take the ale." The doctor needn't have worried about my memory in this case. It was not difficult to lure Palmer into taking a walking tour with me, but 3 days later we filed out of the Bear Inn at Burwash, armed with ash sticks, which should have been umbrellas, and light haversacks. We took the path called Bateman's Lane, and soon halted to admire Rudyard Kipling's weather-beaten manor house. The house, locally known as Bateman's, was formerly the cradle of the Collins family, one of the members being commemorated by a 14th century cast-iron slab in Burwash Church. The Collins family were forge masters at Burwash for centuries. There is a tradition that the forge master who built the house promised his men Christmas fare as long as the oak log lasted. The Sussex furnace men, who were always able to take care of themselves, for all they call it silly Sussex, laid their heads together, sought out the biggest, gnarliest oak upon the estate, cut a huge log from it, soaked it in the river for a week, and then rolled it in triumph to Bateman's, and laid it out behind the fire dogs. There it hissed and fumed and spluttered for a good 14 days, until 2 nights after Twelfth Night, some say, in spite of all the ash sticks, faggots and dry triggy wood the master of the manor piled upon it. The old grim Sussex fellow, and a grim old Sussex fellow was the iron founder, and he did not wink an eyelid, and being waggish withal, he saw the humour of the situation, and rewarded his men for thus outwitting him with a great supper and an extra measure of ale all round. Mr. Kipling is a indefatigable walker, and he is to be met tramping the Sussex roads in summer and winter, in wind and storm and rain. Of what consequence it is to him that his boots sink 6 inches in the mud. Town makes for imprisonment, and here in the country is freedom and mud. Like the true philosopher that he is, Kipling regards mud on his boots as an equivalent to a title deed from the land that he loves so well. But Kipling's outward championship of modern progress, we know... read that again. Behind Kipling's outward championship of modern progress, we know that he finds something untouched and unalterable in the Sussex people, and loves them well for it. He has been careful not to outrage Sussex tradition by the he has been careful not to outrage Sussex tradition by having the telephone at Bateman's, and where it has been possible to keep alive the customs of the land on the farm, they have been preserved. To this day, therefore, all his farm gates at Bateman's have heave hatches, just as they were in Saxon times, pieces of pale fence, which may be taken out of their mortices and put in again. He has an American motor plough, it is true, and this is regarded with intense disfavour by the rustics, but he chuckles with delight when his bailiff remarks, "This old motor plough may be all right in Ameriky, but doesn't turn the half not a spit deep. 'Tain't no good for the honour of the land." However, lover of old things as Kipling is, he has not been able to resist the lure of the radio set. He explains that he finds it so useful for getting the time from Greenwich. There is more in this than meets the eye at first. His house is 4 miles from a station, and in a part of Sussex where folk only work when they feel the urge. At Burwash, even the wheels of time occasionally became a little clogged, but now he gets the time by wireless, and it is right to the second. Have a slurp of coffee here. Some of Mr. Kipling's neighbours have been listening in to the service and sermon at St. Martin's in the Fields in London. This has entrapped Mr. Kipling's fancy about the ultimate outcome of the wireless church service. For many years, the city churches have been very poorly supported by the public and are always almost empty each Sunday. It is Mr. Kipling's idea that each one of the deserted London churches might be able to secure a supplementary congregation by wireless. But how can one contribute to the collection by wireless? And what action would the vicar of Burwash take if the vicar of St. Martin's in the Fields annexed his parishioners with the wild winter's waves? However, I digress. This is a walking tour, not a study of Kipling's environment. Forward! We turned our face to the steep track which runs by Park Farm, a model dairy in which Mrs. Rudyard Kipling is keenly interested, and we commenced to climb through high wood. The rain came softly to us, like the touch of fairy fingers on our cheeks, and the violet space of clear colour was revealed in the sky, among the clouds as dark and solid as smoke from a battleship. First the track was wet and slippery. Here my companion exalted himself beyond my knowledge as an acrobat and tumbler. On that slippery clay he improvised the art of walking with many marvellous variations, so that our progress was sometimes a barn dance and sometimes a Charleston, varied on slippery steep patches by a little impromptu tobogganing. But that way through the high wood, oh, that I could do it justice, is one of the most inviting and mysterious walks in Sussex. Over the old scarred moss of the track we walked, a track which had been used alternately by Celt, Roman, British, Norman, Saxon. Every foot of it had given birth to a human being. Every yard of it had sent a man to the trenches of Flanders that Sussex might be free. It had grown tender and conscious with the flurry of human emotions. Down below we looked back on Burwash Forge, which drove such a prosperous trade in gunfounding during the 16th century. Here over this very track the guns had been dragged by teams of horses to the seaports on the south coast. Our eyes rested on a most tranquillising scene, the River Dudwell, twisting like a silver thread through the meadows, the red-tiled oast houses on Kipling's estate, and the old watermill below the twinkling mill pool. 680 years ago that mill was grinding corn at the same bend of the stream. On August the 28th, 1246, the king granted to Gilbert of Kent to be held by himself and his successors, the parsons of Burwash, for ever, land which the Countess of Eu had given Robert Faber. On that same day the king also signed an order to the bailiff of the manor of Burwash to build a mill on the manor. In 1280, the rent of the Western Mill is mentioned in an old record as a rent set to 1 mark on the park of the Lords of Burwash. Park Mill and Park Farm now perpetuate the vanished enclosure and mansion of the manor of Burwash. Rudyard Kipling's story Cold Iron in Rewards and Fairies unfolds in and about the High Wood. The old pink farmhouse of Little Lindens of the story is Park Farm. The forge, where slave rings were made and sent to all parts of England, packed in oak sawdust, is Burwash Forge, and Pook's Hill is Park Hill, below the Wheel Inn. Burwash Forge is undoubtedly a very ancient place name. It's mentioned in the records of a chancery suit in 1592 between Robert Croutenden and Thomas Hepton, names which have ever since been known as names here, for the performance of an agreement to the former to purchase of the latter an iron forge of ironworks, known as Burghurst Forge, the inheritance of one Henry Henry Colley, and of a certain stack of coal lying in the same forge containing the number of 300 loads, being very necessary and beneficial for the persons as should occupy the said iron forge. I've just realised that was actually a bit of legalese that I just read there, which I didn't put any sort of accent on to give you that impression, so I apologise for that. Minepits Shaw is a little to the east of Burwash, and will recall Kipling's ballad, telling how 2 poachers running from Lord Pelham's bloodhounds escaped by tumbling into great old pit, which had once been worked by the Sussex forgemen. On again, we surged up infinite lengths of mossy carpet. Still we forged our way through the accommodation roads, in which we found no accommodation but wheeled clay. After a mile climb, we disembarked on the naked upland and gained a spectacle of the Weald, where, on the next ridge, Brightling Needle heaved itself 646 feet above the sea and weighed upon our eyes. It was on this spot, when Napoleon threatened invasion, that a beacon was always ready to be lighted at the moment the long-expected landing of the French in Pevensey Bay should begin to take place. A footpath led us by Highwood Cottage to Perch Hill Farm, with faces towards the Needle. At Barnhouse Farm we turned from a rough mile of high road to a new track turning to Little Warge Farm. At the end of the Sugarloaf Wood we bore through a mass of crackling brushwood and plunged down a fern glade, fenced with woods so virgin, so untouched, that one would not have been astonished to find the last of Harold's axemen hiding there. Does this kind of place produce hallucinations?" said my walking partner in a whisper. "'Cause I've just seen Pan playing on an elderpith pipe with a dozen hares dancing around him. A very wet day for Pan, but he was there until we scared him. Don't tell me it was a shepherd playing on a tin whistle, because I saw Pan's horns, pointed ears and crooked nose. I have not been trained to accept Pan as part of the Sussex landscape, but I know one of the old gods when I see him. At the next inn I shall pour libations. And make burnt offerings to my new mascots." At that moment the sun, which had sulked all the morning, came out with tenderly spacious warmth. It waved gold lances over the trees and struck full on the hills, turning all common things into miracles. "Look! Look! It's sorcery!" cried Palmer. "Pan heard me and sent sunshine." He ran his eyes voluptuously over the sun-bathed woods, and with a wild "Hello!" cast his stick up in the air. "I cast my stick to appease the gods," he shouted. And I slurped. The stick hurled up into the blue sky between the trees, and we waited for it to fall. But it did not return to earth. The smiles changed on our lips, and we looked blankly at one another. The moment passed into an age, and then something went bounding and frisking through the woodways in front of us. The brushwood crashed and echoed behind it. Some may think the stick struck a treetop. Well, they are entitled to their opinion, but as for me, I have my own views. I know that in the very instance of calling upon Pan to receive the stick, he jumped from the top of a sacred fir tree and snatched it. I know that never again will any mortal eye behold that ashen wand. We pressed down onto the valley, passing Little Warge Farm and its oat house and 300-year-old barn. A few minutes later we pulled up at Glazier's Forge, where Willingford stream washes over a mill dam that once worked a forge hammer and water wheel. The house by the stream, a place of golden stone and red tile, was built by an ironmaster somewhere about 1650. In the stream we found a huge slab of Ashburnham bivalve limestone, which gleamed in the sun and water, looking iridescent and speckled like a trout's back. It was probably cut out of a quarry in the valley some hundreds of years ago when Glazier's forge was working. I read somewhere the other day that an American chemist had computed the age of the planet on the evidence furnished by the intricate and unhurried process by which nature manufactures radium at about 1,600 million years. Reflecting on this calculation and watching the water splashing over the huge stranded slab, I remarked that it had been knocking about a year or two. "Yes, sir," said a quarryman who had joined us. "That old stone has been there all the best part of 20 years, to my knowledge." 20 years? 20 years, and the life of that slab must have been less than 1,000th part of a second in the life of a quarryman. It was a great temptation to follow the Willingham Ford up the river Dudwell at Willingham Ford Bridge. Near the bridge is a welter of barns called Pug's Hole, and a track which takes one to Park Hill, which is unquestionably the Pook's Hill of Rudyard Kipling's stories. One map, published in 1813 by the Ordnance Survey at the Tower of London, the hill is marked in clear type as Pook Hill. How the name became debased to the prosaic Park Hill I cannot imagine. However, this fact will justify one in tracing the derivation of the place Pug's Hole to Puck's Hole, the house of the familiar figure immortalised by Shakespeare in A Midsummer Night's Dream. From the forge the track climbed up a green cutting brimful of liquid sunshine, and then changed frankly into a small chalky road which led us, after a terrific struggle with slimy wet limestone, to Blackdown Mill, which waved and twirled its wings at us from the ridge at Punnett Town. The old windmill is still working and has a fine wooden brake wheel with applewood teeth and an ancient wrought iron crane for hoisting millstones. Punnett Town can boast a second windmill, which is still active. This is a small mill which was removed from Rye in 1682. It is now used to drive a set of circular saws. From a cupola platform of Blackdown Mill, we were rewarded with the sunset view of 30 miles of country, with the observatory on the ridge of Brightling looking like a mosque transplanted from the hills of Syria. Viewed from this point, the downs to the west, with the bold hills of Caburn and Ditchling Beacon brooding on the skyline, form, I will maintain, as beautiful a view as any to be found abroad. The stone spire of Dallington Church faded as the sun dipped behind the downs, and the long shadows possessed barn, oast house, and cottage, one by one. We watched the light die from the sails of the adjacent windmill, and all the brave green background of Sussex surrender to the bat-haunted twilight. The downs faded from dove colour to deep blue, and, accepting the coming night as they accepted a million gone, settled to rest among the shadows of the dead centuries. Then we descended from the mill and turned towards Heathfield to seek the shelter of an inn. How are we doing? So there we go. That's the first chapter. Good afternoon. My dad built his own radio set. Hello to Graham Cass. Hello to Jack Fleet. You have such a beautiful voice, Richard. Thank you very much. Well, when I can read smoothly, it's not so bad. Thank you, but I appreciate that. Could do a video researching witchcraft's history in Sussex. Yes, that would be good. Thank you, Zach. How about Richard's video, The Witch in the Ditch, from Philip Mercer's book? Yes, that's true. That is a good one. Over at Five Oaks, I think. I think I once tried looking for that house where the witch is supposedly to have lived. I wasn't very successful because there's been a lot of development up at Five Oaks. Anyway, we're on the next chapter. These aren't numbered, by the way. They're just there. Anyway, we'll see how we go. We might get through this. We might rattle through this. So let's hope it's okay. This chapter is called Cookfield. Let's go to Cookfield actually and do a video there. I did think, by the way, that what would be good is to sort of follow this route because it's quite an easy thing to follow, I think. And I meant to sort of start doing the videoing so it would be in time with the reading, so it would make more sense. But actually, a few things have come up to prevent me doing that. But I hope to do that. So many things I hope to do, like carrying on the Arthur Stanley Cook stuff. But we still can't get into churches at the moment, not at a drop's hat, and he does visit the churches, so I just sort of thought, well, there's no point really until we can actually get into the churches. So here we go. Cookfield. Rain drove us into the King's Head at Cookfield. This is not an excuse. No human being could have weathered that storm. The wind was out to goad the rain to all kinds of spiteful tricks. My noble companion went into the bar to play a quiet game of shove halfpenny with the local baker, and I fell back into a deep armchair to doze. The wind and the rain worried me with importunate half-court confidences. But the walk from Horsham had made me sleepy. What do you mean, the walk from Horsham? I thought he was in Heathfield. He sort of dived over there a bit quick. The walk from Horsham made him sleepy. Well, yes, because he's gone up from Cookfield. Wait, that's completely... I wonder if these are short little walks, because that does not connect if you know the landscape. How bizarre is that? Hey-ho. The water poured off the roof in a torrent. The wind drummed, coughed and spat, and retired upstage as a great crowd of people moaning. I must have fallen asleep, for my next memories were from the land of dreams. Naturally enough, my dreams were of cataracts and floods. I dreamt I was steering a torpedo boat over flooded Sussex, a lone, incompetent steersman on a great rushing tide which was carrying me over the edge of the earth. I was hanging on to the wheel for no conceivable reason, for I have never yet mastered the art of navigating a rowing boat. I felt the sucking uplift of one wave and the descent of the quivering steel greyhound into the next. I was hurrying towards new worlds, and had I dared to remove my hand from the wheel, I could have caught a dozen stars with my hat. At last, somebody shook me, and I woke up to real life once more. Well, you do have a knack of meeting. What? Well, we do have we do have the knack of meeting, boomed a voice in my ear, and Mr. Snow, the landlord of the King's Head, wrung my hand. Yes, I've moved here from the Star Inn at Battle. Didn't expect to see you drop in. Later, I don't know who spoke then. Later, over a great meal, we caused libations. Libations? We caused libation. What does that mean? He referred to that. Can somebody... Libations. Libations. Is that something to do with liberal? Liberal pouring, is it? We caused libations to flow in honour of our reunion with Dick Snow. We'd met him during a Sussex walking tour 3 years before, and it was the greatest good fortune to be under his roof again on such a cruel night. You cannot be dull with Landlord Snow, for he is a robust fellow who has the perfect manner of hospitality. In an hour we had received the freedom of the house. Mr. Snow dragged us into the Georgian dining room to see the old parliamentary clock, and showed us his treasured shovel board, cut from a tree in Battle Abbey, which must have witnessed the officers of William as they rode hither and thither, collecting material for the Doomsday Book. "Do you like cider?" asked our host. "I must take you across the way and call on Mr. Burnetshaw. An old friend of mine. He'll just trundle over. Come on, we'll just trundle over. Come on." We followed at Snow's heels across the road and up the path of Ockenden Cottage, where Mr. Burtonshaw drew us into a cottage with heavily timbered rooms. Ockenden Cottage was once the White Horse Inn, long before the King's Head had ever existed. The old bottle glass windows in the interior doors, which date from the 17th century, and the deep-hewn cellars suggest its former career. And somehow, in a curious, unobtrusive way, you feel that Mr. Burtonshaw, its present tenant, must be one of the last of the long line of Time Lords then, the long line of old-time landlords. A fine, grand old man, a good figure of a man. Drinks, libations, drinks. Thank you. Libations. Oh, okay, there we are. We've learnt something every day. I think that was just the lovely Julia texting me to say, I don't know if she's... I'm going to text her back quickly, because she'd be gutted if she's live doing the reading. She's probably forgotten. So liberations is drink. Not liberations, libations. Is that how it's pronounced? Libations. A drink poured out as an offering to a deity. All right, okay, libations. You learn something, you see. It's all old English, isn't it? Where was he? He was doing something interesting. A grand old gentleman. Oh, yes, Mr. Burtonshaw. We talked of the past, as men will talk, and one felt that he was the last link with all the real history of Cookfield. With a deft-handed, kindly gesture, he poured age out of a bottle for us, cider in which lurked all the glory of 20 years' sunshine. Potent stuff it proved to be too, full of swords and songs, as Mr. Burtonshaw remarked. After a glass of that cider, I saw things from a mist of vital stillness. Later we went to a dance at Cookfield's nightclub, the Queen's Hall, at 9:30 till 1 a.m. We felt a little out of gear after a walk of 20 miles, but otherwise fit and determined to be gay dogs to the very end. The floor was full of young men and girls fox-trotting to the music of a jazz band. But the surprising thing was the silence of the place apart from the music. There was no chattering or laughing, the only drone of the orchestra and the slap and slide of dancing feet. It was like watching a film. All the dancers expressed their thoughts with their eyes and limbs, and one almost expected to see the explanatory subtitles of the picture palace flashed upon the white wall at the end of the dance hall. Have moving pictures influenced modern dancing? The music ended and the lights flashed up. Once again, one felt the atmosphere of a film director. The end of the dance was equivalent to a fade out in film punctuation. In a second, the dancers parted and men and girls silently returned to their respective corners. No boy moved a yard with a girl after the dance had finished. This rule was inexorably in the Cookfield dance code. The film had run to the end and the actors silently dissolved. There were more handsome girls in the Queen's Hall that night than one would see in many of the great London hotels and clubs. It is certain that one could not see such abundant form and life and spirits at the Ritz or the Savoy. The girls' feet were lifted gaily and with ease, and it can no longer be said that the Sussex maidens are slow of movement through walking over clay fields and heavy lanes. That's what they used to say about the Sussex maidens, that because of the they say they were taller. They were taller than anybody else because the clay in Sussex gripped them so much that in order to pull out their legs, they stretched them. I think that's where that suggestion comes from. The music started up again. The boys selected their partners with gesture of the eye and head. The girls danced with set faces and a rippling movement of their shoulders. Their dancing was surer and more jointy than their men partners. Indeed, the girls, I will avow, were more vital, smarter, and physically superior to the male of the Cookfield species. It struck me again and again that girls run Cookfield. Everywhere you see their trim, businesslike figures at the head of the affairs. In the shop, in the office, even on the farm, you will meet the dancing Cinderellas next morning carrying all kinds of impossible jobs. One of the smart Eton-cropped dancers passed me next morning riding a motorbike, a motorcycle and sidecar. She informed me that she daily delivered milk over a 15-mile round. Ockenden House is only a few steps from the King's Head Hotel. It is an ancient building of lichened and weather-worn stone, with mullioned windows, which was, for a century or so, in the possession of the Burrell family. It's now a boys' school, and the present occupier took me over the house, up the honest wagon-wide staircase, along the oak-lined passages, through the banqueting hall, bower, and secret chamber. The light poured along the nut-brown panels, and as I passed, I noticed everywhere the carved monogram of the Burrells. It was at Ockenden House that Timothy Burrell kept a set of account books which throws out many interesting sidelights on the life of a Sussex squire in the 18th century. Some of Timothy's entries are rather ironically worded. 1705. Paid Gosmark for making cider one day, whilst John Coachman was to be drunk with the cashier's money by agreement. When I paid 2d to the glazier for mending John's casement, broken at night by him when he was drunk. 1706, 25th of March, paid John Coachman by Ned Virgo, that he may be drunk all over the Easter week, in part of his wages, which was £1. A much favoured dish of the Burrell manger was a fearsome concoction called plum porridge. It seems to have been a kind of plum pudding deluxe, and it may interest the reader to know the inwardness of its composition. Take a beef soup made of legs and beef, 12 quarts. If you wish to be particularly good, add a couple of tongues to be boiled therein. Put fine bread, sliced, soaked and crumbled, raisins of the sun, currants and purants, 2 pounds of each. Lemons, nutmegs, mace and cloves are to be boiled with it in a muslin bag. Add a quart of red wine and let this be followed, after half an hour's boiling, by a pint of sack. Put in a cool place and it will keep through Christmas. Timothy was a contented, happy-go-lucky fellow, with much less of severe poetry about him than boisterous prose. To the petty tradesman, or the town beadle, he was Old Burrell. Just that, Old Burrell, and nothing more. But to the hundreds of poor people of the countryside, he was a loyal and devoted friend. The record shows that he liked nothing better than to stand in the bower by his front porch and deal out provisions to the poor and needy. Every Sunday morning it was his practice to deal out beef, beer and wheat to all the poor people who applied to him. The bar of the public house perpetuates the bower of the early manor house. Near the porch of a monastic inn or manor house, a small chamber was generally reserved for the distribution of ale, wine and bread. This compartment was known as the bowery, and it is said that it derives its name from the Norse bur, meaning buttery. It is typical of the persistence of custom that to this day the nomenclature of Norman England still continues to be used in our modern inns. The hostilia survives in our country hostels as the ostler, and the chamberlain's post is now filled by a chambermaid. It is not mere chance that the presiding genius over our English inn is called the landlord, for clearly the title of Lord of the Manor, outliving the centuries, has descended to every tavern keeper throughout the land. If one follows the road south from Cookfield, If one follows the road south from Cookfield, it is soon found dividing at the Green Cross Inn at Anstey Cross, the right-hand branch for Hurstpierpoint, on which in a mile or so is past Lee Pond, one of the largest sheets of water in the county. The left branch for St. John's Common and Burgess Hill. We made towards Lee Pond, which is called locally Pond Lie, having been told what a wonderful old watermill was to be seen at Lee Farm. No roads for us, if possible, and soon we were floundering in the mud of a footpath running past Lane's Farm golf course, crossing the road at Havers Hill and Leigh Manor, or even Lee Manor. Mr. A. E. Laws of Pond Lie Mill asked us to accompany him over the mill. He wanted to show us what was most interesting. You see, I'm making a study of the mills. There is a wonderful oak centre shaft which might have been a mast tree of an ancient gallows, he said, leading us down the millstone steps to the stone floor. Look here. And his voice became more and more enthusiastic. A central shaft is 60 inches in girth. It stands as it stood 200 years ago. The family turned this mill over to me in 1921, and they held it for over 200 years. Mr. Laws took us over the mill, urged us up dark, narrow stairs, pointing continually, here, there, and there. Come out onto the roof, he said. We followed him through the canopy window and came out onto a flat lead roof. We shall never see 3 tons of lead on the roof again, he said, explaining. This is where the old-time millers sun-dried their corn. Look at the downs over there. What a view! Absolutely wonderful. Somewhere southward, between the gaps of friendly, smooth-backed downs, lay the Channel's glassy, cold blue expanse. The rain blurred the view and turned everything to dulled steel and pewter. The wet summer had vanished in chill grey, and the smell of autumn assailed our nostrils. My hat dripped moisture, and the drips from the red-tiled gables of the mill drummed on the sodden grass below. Yet in spite of the decay and damp, I felt that there was health and life in the mellow autumnal aroma. The misty air stuck to my lips, and from it I seemed to draw a new and wonderful elixir. It was something more than air. It was something infinite. It was some infinite force which is not to be found in any town. Later, we retrogressed over the velvet grass to the high road, and journeyed as far as the Sportsman Inn near Deanhouse Farm. The interest in this inn lies in its structure, a point that has not previously been noted. The building consists of one inn built in front of another. The Sportsman is a modern brick and plaster building, but on passing through the house, one comes into the old Magpie Inn, which claims to be 300 years old. Inside the Magpie, the low-ceilinged kitchen has stooped and settled down with age, but the huge beams of wheeled oak, squared enormously like timbers of a mighty ship, still defy time and all the elements. On the exterior plaster of the gable, some forgotten plasterer shaped a pewter pot and a magpie. They still remain to this day. From this, it seems probable that the house was originally called the Magpie and Pewter Pot, from a magpie standing by a pot and picking out of it. I remember seeing a similar sign from an inn in Wood Street in London, the Magpie and the Pewter Platter. The oldest sign is the pie, which was originally the name of this bird, and only subsequently, for its cunning ways, did it receive the nickname Maggoty Pie, meaning quaint little bird. The name was gradually abbreviated to Magpie. The old epitaph is preserved in a jingle. Round about, Maggoty Pie, my father loves good ale, and so do I. And then we come to the end of the second one, and I think we'll leave it there. The next one is Hickstead to Bolney. If you know these places, I guess some of the names mean things, but the names of the farms, of course, perhaps more known back in those days than they are today. People don't know the names of farms, and half the time the farms probably aren't there or remain there, but are now just private residences with BMWs or Land Rovers or whatever, Range Rovers parked out the front. I can keep a track on Richard Noun. Damn it, these school runs have thrown me off. How did I forget it? Sorry, I'm late. I just texted you a while ago, actually, Julia, because I thought you must have forgotten, but we'd already got going and I couldn't really do very much. Let's have a look. So, yes, libations are drinks. Libations. Oh, is that how it's pronounced? Libations. Battens? Bations? Betish. Anyway, blessings, is it? Long-legged Sussex girls. There we go. I thought, says Linda Kane, may accept the offer as it had been on previously for £8 on bid and didn't sell. Not quite sure what she's talking about there. Always worth. I can keep a track on it now, Richard. The Sportsman is still there. Oh, is it? The pub. Oh, that's interesting. Anyway, I don't know whether you find that interesting or not, whether it's just too indulging, but I think we're going to pass through this quite rapidly. So it's a little bit... I slowly get into the rhythm of the writing. So I hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, aim to be back again tomorrow, 4 o'clock, to do the same. There's the Vogue show this evening with the lovely Julia. So that's something exciting to look forward to. I hope you enjoyed today's video of Dumpman. He is back and he wants to appear in the Vogue show coming up. So that was good. Archie Jenner says, hi, I saw you the other day outside the corner shop down the road in Worthing. Nice to see you there, Archie. Thank you very much. The Bolney Stage, says Edward Moulding. Is that one of the pubs? Well, you never know. We might get more familiar ones when we get going. We get this Lewis. Lewis comes up. Haywards Heath, Lewis, Brighton. Seaford to Jevington, Sheep Bells and Shepherd's Crooks, just to give you an indication of some of the things. Windmill Days, I don't know. Hilaire, Belloc Country. So, 1926, all a bit of fun. Were you recording when... Archie says, you were recording. When will that video come out? When was that? It depends when you saw me, because if it was the other day, it's probably out. You record. I can't think. You were outside the corner shop down the road in Worthing. Which corner shop and down which road? That's the thing. Enjoyed the reading, Richard. I know none of the place, but no. Well, I don't know many of them. But there we go, anyway. Saturday. Oh, Saturday. Hang on a minute. I can't even think. I was with Mr. Suggett on Saturday. So I don't think I was doing any recording. Or Sunday. Wait a minute. Sunday. What did we do Sunday? That was yesterday, wasn't it? Went to Knepp. Went to the Knepp estate yesterday. And the other thing I did was the Daddy Longlegs in Brighton. So it was near a park. Yes, very specific. But they're still quite wide. A park. Excuse me. That COVID gets everywhere, doesn't it? Sneaks in when you're least... Did you get your veg in Ferring? Yes, I did. The only thing is that they basically do greenhouse veg, Mediterranean style. So chilies, which is nice. And the chilies, by golly, they were powerful. Sweet peppers. And aubergines and interesting tomatoes. So that's about it. Archie says you were thinking Friday. Friday. Off the top of my head, I cannot think. It was definitely Friday. Okay, Friday. What the hell was it? I can't remember what I was doing Friday. What did I do Friday? But where? What road? What park? Where? I mean, where? If you can be more specific, that would really jog my memory. Archie. Because I can't bring to mind where you mean. It'll probably hit me like a ton of bricks as soon as we finished. And we're going to finish in a minute. But down the road by the corner shop's a bit vague because that could be anywhere. Anyway, I think we'll finish there. Was Friday when your tyre burst? Yes, that's right. Yes, of course. A day off. Yes, Archie. Yes, that's it. Down the road and by the corner shop. I know exactly what you mean now. Sorry about it. Completely forgot. I had a burst tyre and I just did a little piece to camera which went out in the Vogue show, but it didn't go anywhere else. Wait a minute. Hang on a minute. Just for you, Archie. Try this. Well, it's always embarrassing, isn't it? When you get a flat tyre and it's right close to your house. Just about 300 yards from my house, I've just got a flat tyre. I haven't changed a tyre, probably myself, or had a flat tyre for about 20 to 30 years. So this is a bit of a bugger. I was just going over to pick up the lovely Julia, and we were going to go to Pulborough. So I am a member, and funnily enough, my new renewal has just come up of the AA, so I've called them out. And they say they're going to be here in about 15 minutes. They gave me a 2-hour slot, but they said they'll be here by 10, and it's sort of 10 to 10 now. So luckily I have got a spare tyre. I hope there's enough puff in it to puff it up, but I'll have to get a new tyre or have my old tyre repaired. And I only live just up there, about 300 yards, and I'm on a yellow line, but I daren't move the car. Anyway, I'll just wait now for the AA. Yeah, there we go. Yes, sorry about that. I couldn't think. And of course it was a flat tyre, which in the end was more than a puncture. I had to have the whole bloody tyre replaced, which was irritating. That cost me 45 quid. But there we go. There was 3 of us, says Archie. I was there. I think I was so preoccupied with my tyre, I can't really remember who else was there, but I have to say the AA came. They were brilliant. The chat was very swift, changed my tyre for me, and I haven't changed my tyre, as I said, there for like 25 years or something, and I didn't know if I had all the right kit in the car, but they come and he was there within 20 minutes, so it was a piece of cake. Anyway, there we go. I will catch you up tomorrow here, the Vobes show on the Vobes show channel tonight. Vobes as in spelt like that, just so Archie gets it, and I will see you on. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you very much. I hope the book was all right. If not, we'll get another good book. I'm open to suggestions. I just wish I could read them a bit better. I hate it when I stumble over the words, but I'm doing it blind, so almost literally. Anyway, bye for now. See you on. Bye bye.